అరే ఇంకా 2 minutes ఉందిగా, అప్పుడే జాయిన్ అయిపోయారు. నోట్ చేయడం వచ్చింది రైట్.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good
You're
afternoon,
able
ma'am.
to hear me? You're able to see me, right?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Yes,
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Roger, ma'am.
Okay. Uh, are certain students not able to join the session? Is it so? Is Manpreet Chaudhary here?
Ma'am, Manpreet is not able to join.
Why so? Is Manpreet not added in this team?
ఆ రికార్డులు ఎంతమంది ఉంటే అంతమందికి పడతాయి.
First of all, you mute yourself and you speak to me. Okay. Ask whoever is not able to join that they need to come to the chat, the team conversation. Okay. Over there, the class which I have scheduled, the meeting which I have scheduled, easily everyone can join. I think there are 96 attendees right now. Okay. I would suggest that you use a laptop app. All right. Don't log in using the any browser. Use the laptop app, download Meet, Microsoft Teams, and then you are able to access all the features. Okay?
Ma'am, it shows that we have a class at 7 o'clock as well. You scheduled another class at 7, yeah, ma'am.
No, I don't think so. Is
Can
it
you
Mac?
Ma'am, but in the calendar,
Yes, ma'am. It's in the
7 to
calendar actually. It's
Yes,
scheduled.
ma'am.
Ma'am, you scheduled 2 classes.
Okay.
And it says
But
we have
there
no
is no
title,
class.
but whenever I click on it, it shows it's environmental law.
All right, maybe it's a mistake from my side or the admin. I'm not sure. I did not schedule a class at 7. Okay, there is no class, and if it is scheduled after we are done with this class, I'll cancel that one. I'll delete that meeting. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, it might be a mistake. I'm sure. Okay. There is no class at 7. Your last session is, I think, this 6th session only. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Let's start today's class. Right now, we'll start what we have to cover today. So, all right, before I start the class, there is an assignment which I would want to give. There is a topic in Unit 1 which relates to cultural and religious practices for environmental preservation, okay, in India. So even though we have the law, whatever the law is there, it's there. But there are, like I told you earlier in the introductory class, that there are religious and cultural practices also which knowingly or unknowingly help in preserving the environment, right? So for Saturday's class, okay, we have a class on Saturday as well. I expect you to be well versed with what are the religious and cultural practices which are happening at least in your area, okay, your geographical area. It would be fine, or you can pick any other area, and we'll have a short discussion on that, okay, and from that our points will come out. Okay, so Saturday's class we will discuss religious and cultural practices for environmental preservation. Do you understand? Like, I'll give you an example. You know of the Chipko movement, right? I'm sure everyone will be aware of the Chipko movement.
Yes, ma'am.
So something like that. So religious, at least one religious or cultural practice everybody should come up with. We will discuss, and I think that would be a better way of covering everything, because there's not one like a mandated thing. There are so many religious, cultural, and regional practices for environmental preservation. Okay, it would be better to take up a discussion class. Okay. Now, I will ask random people, whoever appears on my screen here. It's not alphabetic or anything. Okay, I'll ask random people to tell me a religious practice, at least one. And if you're unable to answer, even if you attend the whole class, I'll mark you absent. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Now, okay, even before I start the class, whatever theory we have to cover, now I'm sure after our last session, you must have seen in the news the event that happened in Lebanon. Okay, what are the environmental implications of that? Did you think from that perspective? I think Vivek Garg is one student who posted a YouTube video for that. So I expect all of you to be aware like that way. So what do you think are the environmental implications of that?
There is a lot of air pollution, ma'am, because of that, because of the chemicals released. And because of that, many people are breathing in air of the chemicals and having complications in the respiratory system.
Right. So any
Also
other?
that land also got destroyed.
Yes. So what
And
was
the
the
water
reason
pollution as
of
well.
that explosion? What was the reason of the explosion?
Ammonium nitrate.
It was left over.
Ammonium nitrate exploded. So some 3,000 metric tons of ammonium nitrate exploded, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you try? So when these events come up in the news, you should always try to connect it with what could be the reason this has happened, right? Okay, investigation is going on. So the factual part, that how did it catch fire or whatever happened, we will get to know. But why was 3,000 metric ton of ammonium nitrate there on the ports of Lebanon in the first place? Right. So
in the year of, I think 2013 or 14, they seized this amount of acid over there.
It was ammonium nitrate. So it was a confiscated shipment of ammonium nitrate. Do you find anything, noteworthy over here, that there's 3,000 metric ton of ammonium nitrate which has been seized? It would be for what activities?
Mostly
I'll tell you what.
nuclear
I'll tell you the purpose of taking 5-10 minutes out of a class to discuss this. Okay, so I'm helping you develop a way of thinking. Okay, it has environmental impacts, very apparently we know, but we should also know the historical and geopolitical aspect of all of this. That is how you will be able to better put forth your points. Okay, so whenever you find these kind of isolated incidents, there's always a history behind it. There's also it tests your comprehension, how you are able to connect world events, how you are able to come up with different angles in this. At the end of this discussion, I'll tell you there is a very big legal question which can be researched. Right now, if you try to come up with a research paper, it will be, you don't have to worry about the originality of it. Okay, I emphasize on research a lot. Okay, so even in this kind of a sensational event, you can come up with legal research questions. Okay, so anyway, what is the history of Lebanon? Why do you think Lebanon is a country which would have to confiscate this much of ammonium nitrate and all?
Ammonium nitrate can be used to create bombs. I mean, it can
Yes,
be used as
ammunition.
well.
Yes. Any other students?
Nitrate is used to create bombs, but in this case, it was used for agricultural purposes. So, agricultural fertilizer, in the form of agricultural fertilizers, they were kept in the warehouse. It is not for any explosive purposes.
Okay, if it was for agricultural purposes, why would they confiscate this shipment?
Because that's the amount.
Can you be louder, Anav?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go on.
I'm just saying that it was a Russian ship that was caught. I mean, such a large amount of such a dangerous, what do you call, a chemical imported.
In every country, there is a prescribed amount of a certain material which you can take in or move around with. So the amount exceeded by a lot. The Russian ship, which was, as Anav said, the Russian ship was exceeding the amount by a lot. So that's why they had to confiscate the amount.
Yes, good. That's great. Okay, so what does this talk about how laws are there in Lebanon regarding all of this? So agreed that they confiscated it. Okay, but in India we have the Explosives Act. Apart from that, we also have other legislation, telling us how to store all of this, how to take care of it, if need be, how to get rid of these kind of harmful chemicals. Okay, so what you could research on is how laws are there in Lebanon regarding this. So even if they if it was over and above a particular limit, they confiscated that. But the fault which can be attributed to the state over here, the government of Lebanon, is that they did not store it properly. Okay, they stored 3,000 metric ton of ammonium nitrate in one place. Right now we don't know how did it catch fire, was it intentional or was it accidental, but in any case state is liable, state responsibility is there. So you can have a look at the laws governing Lebanon, okay, regarding this. But when you do that, keep the history, the politics, the socio-legal, rather the social fabric of Lebanon in mind, and then write a paper. Okay, and this is not just for this particular case. For any other, for whatever research you write, you should keep in mind other aspects also. This will help you come up with relevant arguments. Okay, not just academic arguments. Do you get it? So when I say the social and the basically the demography of Lebanon, what could I be pointing towards? Why do you need to take care of that in the case of Lebanon?
Ma'am, can you repeat your question?
Yes. I said when you are trying to conduct a legal analysis, right, of the laws governing how, even if you confiscate this kind of harmful elements or chemicals, how do you deal with it? Okay, in India we have rules. How to store ammonium nitrate, all of we have the Explosives Act and other legislations also. We'll need a bit of research to see what are the laws governing that in India. But what about Lebanon? Why were they storing 3,000 metric ton in just one place or on a port? Okay, if it caught fire or there was an explosion, this means there is some negligence, gross negligence on the part of the state. Okay, so you can look at the laws over there. But when you're looking at the laws over there, an academic argument is different from a socially relevant argument. Okay, you might argue that XYZ law is not there in Lebanon. That could be an academic argument, but that academic argument won't hold good when you are questioned on the basis of the social fabric or the political conditions of that country. Okay, so what could that be? Now you know that Lebanon is a disturbed country.
Ma'am, they
Ma'am, by
might
the
not
way,
have any more safe bunkers or something like that to dispose, like distribute the amounts. So they had to store it in one place in order to keep it safe.
Like someone said, this was confiscated in 14 or 15, something like that, right? 2000, so 14 or 15. So at
2013.
least you had 3 to 4 years to take care of that, correct? So how do
the
you come up?
Russian ship that came in Lebanon, the ammonium nitrate was not for Lebanon. It was going to Mozambique. So they, due to financial and technical difficulties, they had to halt in Beirut, which is in Lebanon. So due to people called it a floating bomb anyways, but then there was
Due to people?
people called it a floating bomb because they knew that it might explode due to the heat and the temperature of the, because Lebanon is a very hot country. So that's the reason. So it was not something which Lebanon had ordered. It was something which was already there. It was stopped. They didn't ask for the ammonium nitrate first of all. It went to
Arab, you
Mozambique.
have to be louder, okay? I got that you are, pointing towards the fact that it wasn't meant for Lebanon. It was to be transported to some other place. Yeah.
Mozambique.
Yeah. After that.
Ma'am, so and the person who was over there, he told the other locals that this is going to blast and please take care. But the government did not take any action and they kept it. They were very careless about it.
Yeah. So an administrative fail, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Or maybe an administrative fail. So you can come up with legal research questions here as well. Okay.
Isn't Mozambique in like Western or Eastern Africa somewhere?
Yes.
So if that was the case, why would it be stopping in Lebanon?
See, what Anav is saying, I haven't read this. Okay. So there will be so many theories before we know what actually happened because investigation is still going on. So I would be able to tell you something once I read what he told. I haven't come across this one yet. Maybe if you could share the link to it, we can read and discuss.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this was one thing I wanted to share or discuss. Now coming to what we were discussing in the last class. You're able to see the screen, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we stopped at I think we discussed
Ma'am, population growth.
population.
Today we have to discuss from poverty.
Yes, so yeah, you'll have to wait. Right, population we are done with. Poverty, let's discuss poverty as a source of environmental degradation. Right. So before we talk about that, what is poverty? How would you define poverty, or how is poverty defined?
Not able to fulfill basic needs.
Okay. And are there any indicators of poverty that you have?
Nutrition,
Generally, the basic
shelter.
be bought,
Okay.
like food, shelter.
Nutrition, shelter, health.
Okay, nutrition.
Shelter, clothing.
Okay, like we have in India, Niti Aayog's policy of seeing whether a person is below poverty line or not. Niti Aayog has come up with a.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so what is that? Everybody mute your systems because I can hear, traffic congestion over here. And only unmute. Yeah. Yes, you were somebody was telling me Niti Aayog's policy of how to calculate whether a person is under falls below poverty line. No one? Am I audible or have I been disconnected or something?
Ma'am, as far as I remember, wasn't it calculated on the basis of the daily earning of a person?
Yeah, daily earning is one.
Like there's a certain amount of money which a person earns in a day. If it's below that, that means they are below poverty line.
32 rupees a day.
Yeah.
32, yeah. So that is the monetary aspect of it. So 32 rupees for a person living in the urban areas, and some 25 or 23, something like that, for a person in rural area. If you are able to earn on an average this much in a day, you will be above the poverty line. And then globally, how is poverty calculated? Who calculates poverty globally? You know the poverty report and all.
Economic Forum.
Okay,
Economic
what
Forum.
we usually refer to while talking about this is World Bank's report. Okay, the World Bank has set certain, that is not to exclude any other organization, as they are not able to, that you know, they don't calculate poverty levels or anything, but usually World Bank is what we depend on while discussing all of this. So World Bank comes up with a poverty, you know, they set what is the poverty line, which is in dollars. Okay, so a certain number of dollars per day globally, if you are able to earn, you are not below the poverty line. This poverty line keeps changing, it keeps fluctuating, right? So how are they calculating this then? Because the currency of every country is different, right? So how is the World Bank calculating a global limit line for poverty?
With the inflation and purchasing power parity of each state, each country.
Yeah. So purchasing power parity, what they do is they come up with, you know, the minimum required amount in each country to sustain, for a person to sustain for one day in each country, but they will take some 15 to 20 least developed countries. Okay, and then there are a lot of calculations, statistical calculations and economical formulae they use, and using purchasing power parity, they will come up with an kind of an average. Okay, so that was in the 1990s, it was $1 per day, then it became $1.25 a day, and right now it's $1.90 a day. Okay, so throughout, if throughout the world, if you're able to earn more than $1.90 a day, you will be above the poverty line. Okay, is there any problem now in this you know, method of calculation? Is there any problem that you see?
Ma'am, $2 is not enough for a person to live a comfortable life. He can afford food, but rarely.
Who is speaking? Shashwat.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, $2 is not enough for a person to sustain. But we are not talking about comfortable living, right? We are trying to see the minimum amount required for a person to be alive. Okay.
Again,
so the problem,
Ma'am, by calculating the average, I think we are ignoring the extremes of the spectrum. Like, for example, there are some underdeveloped countries and there are some extremely developed countries. Like $2 in America might not be enough to get you in basic food, but in India, 140 rupees is sufficiently, you know, like basic enough compared to 33 that Niti Aayog has given, as you have mentioned. So I think it's the extremes that we're not taking into account here by giving a base number. It's very crude.
Yeah. Yes, great. That was a good one. Who was this?
Ma'am, I'm Harsha.
Okay, Harsha, thanks. Yeah. That was a good analysis. Now there are certain populations in the world who do not use money at all, right? Like I talked about indigenous population. Indigenous population forms a good percentage of the world population. They do not use money as a way of transacting or anything. So ipso fact, just by being an indigenous population, they are put in the bracket of being below poverty line. So we are not taking these things into consideration, and that's why non-monetary ways of calculating poverty came up, right? Now at the beginning somebody said nutrition and all of those things, so non-monetary aspects will be nutritional nutritional value, or whatever number of calories you're able to consume in one day could also be one of the non-monetary aspects of poverty. Okay, so in India, if 2400 calories you're able to consume, you will be above poverty line. So that way there are a lot of other non-monetary aspects of poverty also. But how is all of this related to pollution or environmental degradation now? Yeah.
Ma'am,
Ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, go on. Okay.
Carry on. It's fine.
So basically, I think even some of the aspects that include not having sanitation and so on. So when you do not have toilets, you're basically degrading the environment and not following certain policies for industrialization. Then you're causing more pollution because you're able to afford cheap labor and so on. I think it has an indirect impact.
Yes, very good.
Ma'am, further, if we say, continuing on that aspect itself, environment is more of a stage of life when you're reaching self-actualization. You're at a stage where you can care about something other than yourself. If a person is hungry and is starving and does not have shelter, I don't think environment will at all affect. I mean, he wouldn't think of environment at the moment.
Yeah.
True. So that's why with increase of poverty, the more sustainable methods of sustenance takes a backseat, because ultimately you have to feed them out.
True.
Feed yourselves. Yes.
Yes, I think you have explained it very well, both of you. Okay, so using more sustainable ways will require more resources at your disposal, right? So instead of using anything like an LPG or something, you will resort to something cheaper like coal or firewood, which is still very common in India. Now the government tried to come up with policies which are which contribute to sustainable development, like you had the Ujjwala Yojana. Now what was that? It was a policy by the government, Ujjwala, right? What was this?
You had community kitchens, right?
Sorry?
Hello.
Yeah.
Ma'am, as you said that there is a surrender cost is 600, and when the Ujjwala Yojana was started, and cylinder was distributed to below poverty line people, they only used once at a time. They didn't refill that, because in village areas people usually have their source of fuels to cook their food. Food. They have the free wood. They have the cow dung which which they use. So why will they purchase 600 rupees cylinder?
Cylinder, yes, true. And even in urban areas also, right?
So ma'am, as Sanjay says that a poor person will not think about the environment and all those things. He will just see from where he can bought some wood and cow dung and cook his food.
So we can see the government making efforts to come up with sustainable ways of living, rather than using firewood and coal and all of these things, which will inherently pollute the environment in whatever way you use them. Okay. Now over here we could talk about the pavement dwellers case. Now which is this case that I'm talking about?
Olga Tellis versus.
Yes. Olga Tellis versus BMC, right? What was what are the facts of this case? What was held?
The Bombay Municipal Corporation wanted to evict the slum dwellers from the pavements, and the right to live was it was declared by the SC that it's a fundamental right.
Then why it becomes you are absolutely right. Okay, the pavement dwellers, they were required to be evicted by the BMC, but the court said that it read the right to inside the right to life, they read the right of these pavement dwellers to have a proper environment, living environment, basic amenities, all of those things. Okay, it was important because before they evicted the pavement dwellers from that particular place, they had the BMC make proper arrangements in some other place for the pavement dwellers, right, in good hygienic living conditions, and the basic amenities be provided to them. Okay, so this is how we see poverty, and there are so many other points which you can add to this, that poverty is a contributor to environmental degradation. Okay, if there are any other questions, you may ask.
Mama, how is nutrition, I mean, a valid form of calculating poverty? Because you might have something which will give you X number of calories, but it will not sustain a person. So even if a person consumes X amount of calories, it doesn't sustain that person.
So you, okay, that will be because see, malnutrition and death due to hunger are also a part of developing and developed countries, and especially even in India, we come across these incidences. So coming up with nutrition as a non-monetary aspect of whether you are below poverty line or not, I think it would make sense, because if you are able to consume a specific amount of calories, you won't. Now I'm not saying that, like you pointed out, that if somebody is consuming X number of calories, they won't die or anything, but generally speaking, if you have 2400 calories that day, you will be able to survive, right? So it will be a non-monetary indicator. Definitely, if you don't have that kind of money, where will you bring those 2400 calories from?
Makes sense, makes sense.
Yeah. Now, urbanization. Okay, the next reason for environmental degradation is urbanization. Now, we discussed in the last class, I think, how urbanization becomes a source of pollution, right? So people, now migration from villages and towns has become a very common thing, and people are rushing to the metros, so metropolitans, they have good standards of living, but they are not equipped to deal with the kind of population influx which is happening due to this, right? Now there is another aspect to it, that development happens first in the metropolitan areas. So opportunities, employment opportunities, everything else, it will first come to the cities or the metropolitan areas, and that is why for seeking employment, people will migrate from towns and villages to cities, right? But you have to see whether these cities have the capacity to accommodate them. Now, because they don't have the capacity, it leads to environmental degradation, right? Because there will be, first of all, for the cities to accommodate them, you need some space to live, you need some space, some land to build your dwellings in, right? So there will be deforestation. Human waste management is a huge problem, if you see. Okay, if you look at the recent debates on Rajya Sabha, TV, and all of those things, human waste management has become such a huge problem for almost all cities in India. One of the factors is influx, right, migration from villages to cities. Now, two case laws which we could talk about over here are LK Koolwal versus State of Rajasthan. What was this about? Just a brief idea is okay. What is LK Koolwal versus Rajasthan? No? Okay, so this city of Jaipur, right? In Rajasthan, it was around, I think in the 1980s or something, it was in a condition which was really unhygienic, unsanitary and pathetic, okay? And the municipal corporation over there said that we are not able to provide a clean sanitary environment because we don't have enough money, okay? The state doesn't have funds to clean the roads, to take care of the sewage system, anything. And that's why we are not responsible, we cannot be held accountable. So the court held that non-availability of funds cannot help the state to shrug off its responsibility, right? So funds were allotted, and all of this had to be cleaned up. And that time in the city of Jaipur, a lot of urban planning also happened due to this case, okay, so that this is not happening again, the city doesn't face this again. That was L.K. Kulwal. It is a landmark judgment for environmental as well as constitutional law also. Okay, because the duty of state, how state responsibility is dealt with over here, you can even see that most of environmental law judgments you can also relate to constitutional law, and I think you might have studied most of them in constitutional law also. Okay. The next one is T. Damodar Rao versus Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad. This you should know. Are you aware of this case?
No.
Yes? T. Damodar Rao. Okay. What had happened in this case is that you know how cities are planned, right? In the planning, all lands are allotted for a specific purpose. So there was a land allotted for a recreational park, okay, like a garden. And later the income tax department, will the income tax department be state, by the way? Is the income tax department state? Yes, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So the income tax department wanted to build quarters for its employees, and that was the reason cited by the income tax department, that since we are the state, we have the right to acquire that land and do whatever we want to. And over here the court opined that even if it is the state who is the owner of a particular land, you cannot change the urban planning of that place, because it will change the ecological balance, right? When urban planning is done, there are, urban planning is a course, people can specialize in that. So when urban planning is done, environmental factors are taken into consideration. So if they allow a human dwelling to be made in a place where an ecological park is to be built, it will hamper with the ecological balance of that particular place. And that's why they did not allow it. And a precedent was set that even if state is the owner, you cannot be disturbing the ecological balance of a place. Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hmm.
Ma'am, there are many like natural rocks in Hyderabad and all, but they are being like broken down to bring up buildings and offices. So, like, what about those? It also comes under urbanization and.
Okay, so when you talk about those rocks being cut, now there are permissions which you need to take from the departments. Okay, now over here also this debate also ponders on development versus environmental preservation, right? There are a few case laws I'll talk about today where the Supreme Court itself is in a dilemma. Okay, how do you balance development with environmental preservation? Correct. If they don't allow you to bring down those rocks or cut those rocks and make buildings or roads, whatever the plan is, if that is not done, how are you ensuring development also? So there is always a balance which you need to strike. You cannot just be preserving the environment and be turn a blind eye to development also. Okay, but development shouldn't be in a way that it is causing excruciating damage to the environment. Okay, So all of this is planning, urban planning, and this is passed by the BMC, sorry, not the BMC, the Municipal Corporation of whatever place that, the Hyderabad Municipal Corporation in this case, and also the environmental agencies. Okay, you need to take permissions over there. But this is not to say that you cannot object to all of this. Okay, there are PILs which have been filed on past urban planning, and that has to be stopped. That had to be stopped, but with good reason. You need to show what is the reason, what is the ecology which is being disturbed, and courts have opined in that way also.
Okay,
Right?
ma'am.
Yeah. It's not like just one day they can wake up and start bringing down those rocks and start building things. It takes a lot of years to pass some urban planning or some part of it. But then again, it is your right, to fight against it if you can show reasonability as to why this shouldn't be done. Okay, what is the ecological harm which is being caused here? We'll see. I'll talk about the oleum gas leak case. Okay, so what I'm saying, that was said over there also. We'll see. All right.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Now, moving on, industrialization. Also, we talked about the other day how that can be a source of, environmental degradation. I talked about Minamata and Bhopal. What is the 3 Miles Island? The 3 Miles Island incident. What is anyone? What is it? Okay. So 3 Miles Island was a place, like a dwelling in USA. Okay, and over there was a nuclear reactor which was there for the purpose of making electricity, producing electricity. And that town, it was inhabited by people, employees of that particular company only. So what happened was, even though there were no reported casualties as such in this particular case, some experiment on a nuclear reactor went wrong. Okay, and the reactor, it like spewed out a lot of radioactive material, and there were people who were extremely sick because of that, but there were no casualties as such. Okay, but the 3 Miles Island is considered to be a learning. And after this, after Minamata, after Chernobyl, anti-nuclear power movement started. Okay, so this was like something they were able to prevent, but it is still talked about when we talk about environmental law. Okay, now when we are talking about industrialization and that being a reason for environmental degradation, the most obvious and apparent one is that we are using natural resources, exhaustible natural resources are at the disposal of these industries, right? And that is how environmental degradation is happening. We need to take care that we are replenishing the environment also, and not just using whatever is there. Okay, sustainable development. The principle of sustainable development is what? Why everywhere that you read about the environment or any environmental instrument, sustainable development is given priority. Okay, or sustainable development is what we aim for. But what exactly is sustainable development?
Growth without interfering much into the natural process or the environment.
Growth without interfering into the natural process.
Or the environment.
Yes, that could be an interpretation, a correct understanding of that. Okay, but how it has been defined is that it was introduced in the Stockholm Declaration for the first time, and then the Brundtland Report talked about it. We will talk about these instruments. So for now, sustainable development is you practice development in a way that there is enough left for the future generations to exploit, right, for their development. So sustainable development is you don't finish up or gobble up all the resources right now. You need to make sure that you're making provisions for the future generations as well. So industrialization is a fuel to that. Okay, it's not taking care of development or developing in a sustainable way. All right. Now over here, I need to talk about the Ganga pollution case. Which was this case? What was it about? Now I think Taj Trapezium, Ganga and Pala River case. This everyone should know at least. Factually you should know what it is, if not the ratio and all.
Release of effluents into the Ganga River and disappearance of dolphins, turtles from the river.
Release of effluents in the Ganga River.
Also burning, throwing away half-burned dead bodies into the river.
Yes, these are the, yeah. So this Ganga pollution case, the name of this case is MC Mehta versus Union of India. Okay, but like I told you, there are a lot of cases named MC Mehta versus Union of India because MC Mehta is an environmentalist. Okay, and he files PILs. He has filed innumerable PILs in the Supreme Court, right? So one of the cases is the Ganga pollution case. Now in this case, the facts for this case were that in Kanpur there are tanneries, right? Tanneries, yes. So they used to release their untreated toxic waste into the Ganga River, and that polluted the river. Okay. So when MC Mehta filed a PIL, Supreme Court said that it actually shut down these tanneries. Okay. So one of the effects of industrialization is that water pollution. Similar was the Pala River case. Now, what is this case actually? The name of this case?
It was Vellore Citizen.
Yes,
something.
yes, great. Yeah, Vellore Citizen Welfare versus Union of India. I'm not sure. Okay, so the Pala River case, it was similar to the Ganga pollution case where I'll tell you the name of the case in the next class, but it is the Vellore Citizen Welfare Forum. Okay. Yes. So tanneries polluted this this part of the river also, and that is why this particular forum filed a PIL, and the tanneries were shut. Now, Taj Trapezium case, we will talk about all of these in detail, and you will have to read each and every case over here. When relevant portions of the schedule come up. What is the Taj Trapezium case?
Ma'am, that Taj Mahal started turning yellow due to the pollution that was being caused by the industries. It's also the MC Mehta's case.
Yes, great. Taj Trapezium. So there is a refinery in Mathura, right? An oil refinery, and along with a lot of industries were there in and around that area. Okay, so they used to, one of the waste products or one of the products which used to come out because of the procedures going on in the industry was sulfuric acid. That combined with the moisture in the air, something called the acid rain happened, the phenomena happened, and the Taj Mahal, it started turning yellow because of this. Okay, and the Supreme Court took unprecedented steps over here, and they shut down around 300 industries around the Taj. Okay, that was the trapezium. So trapezium is an area, a particular radius, I'm not sure of the kilometers, around the Taj Mahal where you cannot conduct any industrial activity. Okay, and if you have visited the Taj Mahal recently, in the recent years, you cannot even travel to the Taj Mahal in any cars or anything. Okay, you have to take the rickshaw or some battery operated rickshaws. So that area is the trapezium, hence the name. Okay. Now,
could you please repeat it? I didn't hear. The Taj case.
Taj Trapezium. Okay. So Taj Trapezium is Taj Mahal started turning yellow because of industrial activities around that area. Okay. Now, due to sulfuric acid being released into the air, it was combined with the moisture in the air, something called the acid rain started to happen over there, and that's why Taj Mahal started turning yellow, along with other industrial whatever activities were going on. The effects of that was that it started turning yellow. So Supreme Court said that it shut down all around 300 activities, industries over there. It shut those down completely. And trapezium, the name trapezium, because there is a specific number of kilometers of radius around the Taj Mahal where you cannot conduct any industrial activity. Okay, to the extent that you cannot even travel to the Taj Mahal in your cars or anything, which will cause pollution. Okay, you have to either walk a particular number of kilometers, or you have to take the rickshaw or battery operated rickshaws. Okay. The main culprit in this case was the Mathura refinery here. So because it caused a lot of pollution, and over the years, the Taj Mahal started turning yellow. You know, Mathura and Agra are nearby, okay? Yes?
I said thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. I think the class is about to end. Okay. I'll continue tomorrow. Are there any doubts, any problems? You guys have to tell me, because like I told you, I'm not there physically present with you in class. So, and this is a new class for me, right? You people I haven't taught before. So please feel free to tell me what you're not able to understand, or the way that I teach anything. I will try to, change that.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Anyway, you have to complete that assignment. You have to come up with cultural and religious practices, at least in the geographical area that you live, or any other area that you want to, actually, okay, that are helpful in protecting the environment. All right, and we'll discuss that on Saturday. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
And I'm not kidding
Okay,
when I
ma'am.
say that. Okay, I'm not kidding when I say
Okay,
I'm not doing. I'm going to reduce attendance. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Master won't take attendance. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can we leave? Attendance is up to date.
Not uploaded.
Attendance is uploaded.
Have you done?
Like you have recorded?
Yes. I have recorded
Okay.
attendance of all. I mean, this software automatically records that. When did you join? When did you leave? Everything.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
You told about the Saturday assignment, right? Religion factors. What's that exactly about we discussed?
Okay.
Religion.
Now, who is this Sanchit?
No, that's not me. That's not me.
Sridhar.
Others can leave, okay? If you don't have this doubt, you may leave. But I'll explain what you need to do exactly. So you have to, now in India, we have a lot of, religious, cultural and regional practices for preserving the environment, right? For example, the Chipko movement that we had. Okay.
Okay.
So that way, I want you to come up with at least one regional, cultural, religious, any kind of practice in the area where you live, and discuss that in class. Okay,
Okay,
because
ma'am.
that's a topic in your syllabus. We need to discuss that. So it is something which, I mean, there will be a lot of points if we look at least one practice in each state in India, or any geographical area for that matter. Okay. So I want you to come up with at least one practice, and we'll discuss that.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Since this class has ended, please leave. Don't be here and create ruckus over here, because I've seen not all of you don't leave the class when I leave. You're still here. Beta, Vivek, Nandini, Satya, Divya, Harshita, why aren't you leaving? Leave the class, no? Revant, Deepthi,